A reviewer should judge a piece of work based on how effective it is in achieving its overall aim. As such, most of what this video contemplates on will be through this framework, and the degrees to which its subordinate features, functions, and scaffolding, as it were, buttresses that aim. As you travel through the lands between, the world of Elden Ring as it is known to its denizens, you'll run across a host of NPC characters, some, such as the previously mentioned death merchants, for purchasing items, some, such as certain knights, cells, skills, and whatever these are, while others will have you embark on their mini-quests. And that's where a potential problem can occur. Side missions initiated 5 hours into the game while you're at character level 20. You may not follow through or even remember, until you're already 80 or 90% of the way through the world of the lands between, and already at character level 110. That is because of two things primarily. 1. The game doesn't have a journal or quest log of any kind, so depending on how good your memory is, you may need to have a pencil and notepad by your side to write down where to deliver items you've been given, or where to go in mini-missions you've started. 2. After progressing past the first 2 or 3 stages of any given quest, the NPC who gave you the quest doesn't really give you much information as to where they will go next, or what you need to do, aside from saying something along the lines of, "Perhaps we can have a chat over a plate of blueberry Bismarcks at a Dunkin' Donuts in the near future." You see, the issue with this is what makes these NPC characters progress through their quest lines is dependent on very specific triggers, which must be tripped at very specific places, and in a very specific order. For instance, in order to advance through Millicent's quest, this girl, you must run into and talk to her at a particular cliff, nearby a particular bonfire. However, she gives you no indication of this besides saying, "See you later at the bar." Back in Caelid, after alleviating her of scarlet rot with a heroin syringe, recovered by killing Captain fucking Crunch. Then, without any other indication, you then must meet her much farther to the north, at a windmill village, after slaying Stretch Armstrong, and she'll only appear after resting at the corresponding bonfire. If you move on without sitting at the aforementioned bonfire, or doing the highly immersion-breaking maneuver of quitting out to the main menu, then loading back into the game, and without exhausting her dialogue tree, she will not move forward in her quest line, while you move further along the main campaign. What this means is, she'll stand at that exact spot for the remainder of your adventure, unless you happen to stumble across her, on a very unlikely, and very occasional return trip back to the windmill village. Now, I'm not saying Elden Ring needs to have some mystical Garmin GPS system, conveniently knowing the exact location of a 1,000-year-old hidden Viking warhammer, with the ability to cast lightning from the skies, being located in the third drawdown of the second Cedar Chesser, in the basement of the McDonald's, at the intersection of 12th Salem Street and Westbrook Avenue, you know, like what you'd get in a derivatively typical Ubisoft title. What I am saying is, having a simple mission ledger system, a journal of the NPCs you come across on your journey with a simple reminder of what their goals are, will help the player participate in the storylines of the various side characters encountered in the lands between. However, the one mini-quest which you will likely complete, whether you want to or not, is Ranni's, this girl. And that's only because it's so intertwined with the main campaign. Even though you could technically, you're very unlikely to skip past it, since it's quite parallel to your primary goal. Apparently, she needs you to retrieve her long-lost mythical butter knife, so she can, have a certain someone butter her toast, so to speak. However, if you do finish Ranni's side mission, it in effect locks you out of completing certain other side missions, which you may have been able to finish otherwise. What this basically means is, if you organically follow along the primary campaign, you will very likely end up near the doorsteps of the final few bosses, 90 hours in, and be unable to advance through the quest lines of those NPCs you met 5 to 9 hours into the start of the game. The side quests would have worked more fluidly had it integrated some form of parallel NPC progression system, where the NPCs move forward in their own quest lines, relative to the main story arc. Although you might not acquire a lot of extra beneficial items within their side missions. But at least it would give the players the feeling that NPCs have their own autonomy. Given the previous example with Millicent, were she capable of moving herself to the Windmill Village, without the game needing you to sit at the cliff bonfire first, the NPC and the player would have had more chances to cross paths. Now I'd be remiss to not mention that NPC side quests in Elden Ring make up a much smaller portion of the total experience compared to other RPG titles, say Elder Scrolls, where several side missions are intertwined into the primary narrative. Elden Ring is much more concentrated on the singular path to becoming the next Elden Lord. This is not a negative thing in and of itself. The core directive of the game is character building. To gain effectiveness in weapon, spell, or other capabilities, allowing you to overcome obstacles previously insurmountable at a lower character level. Whether it would be a nigh impossible boss, a key item to gain access to new areas, or simply the capacity to survive the onslaught of a formerly impassable phalanx of Drakenfaust knights, blocking your path to a potentially necessary relic. I am just saying a more interconnected NPC quest system, and a mission ledger, probably would have given the player more opportunities to see the lives of the denizens play out fully. In Dark Souls Remastered, the bosses are like moving puzzle boxes, with which you have to fit the pieces together, while metering your limited resources. And although I haven't played through Dark Souls 2 and 3, from what I have heard they are about the same. Bloodborne and Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice also seems to follow suit, like Elden Ring's predecessors. The stars of the show are the bosses you will inevitably encounter while rummaging through the lands between. The management of your health flasks, and finding the precise moment when to replenish your near-depleted red health bar, is of paramount importance. The same goes for your blue mana indicator, all the while managing your constantly fluctuating green stamina meter, as you attempt to whittle away a large imposing red life bar, of an equally large and equally imposing boss. Except, this time, the sadism of Hidetaka Miyazaki will test your capacity for masochism. It seems the boss fights are designed by SNK, the same developer of the King of Fighters franchise. It's as if From Software thought to themselves, what can we do to make players die even more frequently? And in a drunken stupor, Hidetaka Miyazaki and company, while keeled over a coin-operated King of Fighters arcade machine, located in the cafeteria of the company headquarters, during a beer pong break, had a revelation. Why don't we call SNK? They make awesome boss fights. Am I right, bro Himes? Now, if you've ever gotten to the boss fights in an SNK fighting game franchise, say, Samurai Showdown, Fatal Fury, The Last Blade, and of course, the King of Fighters, you know what I am talking about. Death in 2 to 4 hits? Check. Attacks that cover 70% of the screen? Check. And require pixel-precise timing to dodge? Check. An infinite super meter that never depletes no matter how many supers or ultras a boss throws out? Check. This is a very large departure from prior Dark Souls entries, wherein the bosses are more akin to Disney animatronic robots, with which you memorize a predetermined series of barrages. The attacks wind up and you die, then repeat until you start to recognize the patterns in the onslaught. Fighting some bosses in Elden Ring, by contrast, is like fighting Omega Ugal Bernstein from King of Fighters. Endless combos lasting for ages. Genocide Cutter. Insane damage. Genocide Cutter. Instant flurries. Genocide Cutter. Sporadic attack ribbons. Genocide Cutter. You get the idea. Crafting has been a staple of open world games for Lord knows how long, but a new addition to the Soulsborne formula, an alternative of having to purchase bombs, arrows, antidotes, potions, or any other various tools, from merchants located throughout the lands between. Ingredients and materials scattered around the landscape can be formulated into a host of different items, provided you have acquired the necessary recipe pamphlets, which grant the knowledge of what flowers, mushrooms, or blood-stained feces are needed to craft. Unfortunately, the utility of most of the resulting crafted items will be obsolete by the time you arrived at the halfway point of your campaign. You might ask, why obsolete? Let's take the Altus Plateau, for instance. For most players, this continent will probably be the mid-game. Much of the aggressors in this region have a health bar as robust, if not more so, than some bosses you would encounter in Limgrave or the Weeping Peninsula, some even more so than a few bosses in Clit bombs. For example, whether they're fire, magic, or lightning, which may give players a certain degree of utility for early game boss and enemy encounters, will eventually lose its effectiveness in regions past the Lakes of Lernia. Now, this would not be much of a problem if the materials for crafting certain tools weren't so much work to acquire. For instance, the medium fire bombs requires a material called the Old Fang wolves, which are some of the weaker predatory animals. Rarely drops this item. A more reliable source for this material can be had by hunting large grizzly bears. However, the effort and risk necessary for farming the Old Fang from these rather stout and frankly dangerous animals renders the medium firebomb futile. You might ask, why futile? The damage difference between a small firebomb and a medium firebomb is perhaps 20% at best. And each Old Fang only transforms one small firebomb into a medium one. One measly bomb. A measly bomb that does maybe 15% more damage on average. For the risk of killing a large, aggressive, predatory animal, large grizzly bears are some of the most hazardous non-boss aggressors in the world of Elden Ring. I am comfortable in saying, they are the most dangerous creatures in Limgrave, with a health bar rivaling some second quarter game bosses, and the offensive capabilities to match. I would go so far as to say, they are even more arduous to fend off than many endgame non-boss enemies. For the sake of argument, let's just say you do collect enough Old Fangs to craft 10 medium firebombs. The maximum possible, as you only have 10 ritual pots to collect in the lands between. And there you are, all proud of yourself for having endeavored through all those large grizzly bear encounters to acquire the 10 necessary Old Fangs. For the 10 medium firebombs, you then craft your 10 Molotov cocktails. You can't wait to return to Mistwood Forest in Limgrave, just so you can see the sneering snouts of those respawned large grizzly bears, as you wallop them to Kingdom Come, with your 10 newly minted medieval grenades. Finally, finished with crafting your 10 medium firebombs, beaming with pride, as you assign your newly acquired arsenal to a quick select slot. Then in the distance, out of the corner of your eye, you spot a creature asleep in Mistwood ruins. And what do you know? It's a large grizzly bear. You strut up to the asleep animal, confident in the efficacy of your medieval napalm. You wind up, as if preparing to throw a baseball, then the toss. Anticipation crescendos as your fiery grenade arcs through the cold morning fog of Mistwood Forest. Your eyes widens with bated breath. One moment follows another, each feels like an hour to you. Then the grenade impacts the belly of the slumbering forest beast. Fire and brimstone erupt. The sound, deafening. Surely, no mere animal can withstand the hellfire of an explosive. Imbued with the power of non-human dental additive, the smoke clears. You expect the visage of a lifeless predator laying amongst the ruins of Mistwood. But instead, the creature towers before you. Its health indicator shows nary a sliver of damage. Surely, From Software and Hidetaka Miyazaki wouldn't purposefully mislead adventurers with a device that is all bark and no bite. And you think to yourself, Surely, From Software and Hidetaka Miyazaki must have made it an effect-stacking ordinance. So you wind up once more. This time more forceful than the last. Then another toss. The crest of your anticipation matches the trajectory of the weapon. The bomb whirls across the haze of the forest. One moment passes after another. Each feels like an hour to you. The device then strikes the torso of the awakened bear. Fire and brimstone followed. The sound, as deafening as the first. Surely, no mere animal can withstand the hellfire of two explosives, imbued with the power of non-human dental additive. Again, the smoke fades. Again, you expect the visage of the lifeless predator laying amongst the ruins of Mistwood. But again, the beast towers before you still. Its health bar reduced by another mere sliver of damage. A mistake. It must be. You think to yourself, surely, From Software and Hidetaka Miyazaki wouldn't put players through all this trouble and leave them empty-handed. And once more, you wind up. And once more, you toss. And once more, a Molotov cocktail flies through the dense fog. And once more, the arsenal clash against the fur of the creature. And once more, fire and brimstone. And once more, the sound. Deafening. But once more, the grizzly bear remains resolute. Its red life bar reduced by just another small sliver. Your stomach sinks. You've been had. As realization for the incredulity of the homemade napalm becomes apparent. One moment passes after another. Each feels like an hour to you. The beast stares at you as you stare back in disbelief. The predator then lets out a roar which echoes through the land. You, still in disbelief, stand befuddled as the animal slams its paw against you. Your armor, ineffective. While you shoot backwards through the air, you hear the cackling hysteria of Hidetaka Miyazaki in the back of your mind. Laughing that someone fell for his designs. Laughing that some poor fool, you, fell for his trap. Laughing as you lay there, face planted, limp, and pathetic. There are certain item categories that do maintain their utility throughout the campaign. Foremost among those are the antidotes for various ailments, whether it's poison, scarlet rot, blood loss, etc., or elemental greases to coat your armament, temporarily imbuing your weapon with flame, frost, or lightning enhancing attributes, so on and so forth. However, as with other Soulsborne titles, as I have heard, the number of potions and medicines available are limited by the amount of crafting materials existing in the world of Elden Ring. Become afflicted by scarlet rot one time too often? Well, too bad. The sacramental bud, an ingredient necessary for the creation of the scarlet rot antidote, does not respawn in the lands between once you harvest them. Therefore, be very judicious in the application of resources, or you will find yourself in late game boss or area encounters, infected by the life-sapping decay of the scarlet rot, unable to alleviate the blight. One major aspect of immersion is the sense the game world does not revolve around you. That you are a mere particle among many, each taking their own paths. That the landscape exists as an independent universe apart from your avatar, and will exist irrespective of your existence. A method of introducing this is to directly inform the player regarding conflicts between different factions, which Elden Ring does. Landmarks littered around the different continents recount to passerbys about the apocryphal Battle of Melania of the Haligtree and Radan of Caelid. NPC monologues speak of the greed of Godric the Grafted, and such. Another method is to indirectly show the player the conflicts as it happens, which Elden Ring rarely does. Once in a blue moon, will you catch sight of hostile NPCs in combat with one another? If memory serves, while traversing the lands between, I encountered it but to rare 4 times. The most memorable of which was the area leading up to Redmane Castle. As you work your way to the Festival of Radan, exists a bridge under siege just before the fortress. And just before that, are a squadron of Redmane guards staving off an onslaught of giant grotesquely rabid dogs at the delta to the bridge. This spectacle, really sells the idea of the environments in Elden Ring as a living, breathing world. This exhibition paints the catastrophes of war as the immense hellscape which Caelid has rotted into, an echoing reminder of the long-ago battle between Melania and Radahn. Such a shame then, as the player progresses through the lands between, it is an uncommon sight. 2 or 3 other times, you may see a grizzly bear and wolves in a cove, squabble over food, or find generic soldiers and carrion phantoms struggle for control over a section of the Lernian highway. It's hard to fathom, in a world this immense, with this many coalitions, jousting to be the king of the hill, that you don't see more strife on your travels. Had conflicts abounded more frequently, more organically, and not just as pre-scripted events, it would have given the environment a much greater depth of believability, and not just the feeling of everything else in the gamescape will act aggressive just to the player character. How does the members of one faction have such certainty other affiliates of another faction aren't hostile when they are within 120 feet of each other? Even more weirdly, except for the bear and wolf example given above, how does animals of different species not behave aggressively towards one another? But strangely, all animals, and all non-dialogue game world inhabitants, will be combative towards the player avatar once you come within 30 to 60 feet of them. Even when you are adorned in the exact same helmet, armor, greaves, and gauntlets, designating the same denomination as the sovereignty of inhabitants you are moving towards. Can they smell you from 50 feet away? Do tell. If so, the game even has soap available for you. The game even has scavengeable materials, mushrooms more precisely speaking, strewn all about the landscape, from which you can fashion soap. To cleanse yourself no less, in case you are wondering. Were you to fashion, then remove grime and filth accumulated with said soap. The lingering spring rain shower scent of your avatar, post-soap usage, does not deter the hostility of either individuals or groups of human aggressors or otherwise on your travels. And another thing, one of the more memorable personalities you may run across is Alexander, or Iron Fist Alexander, to be more precise. A rather talkative, and overly rotund, and barely upright, bipedal jar of human, and possibly non-human primate innards and bodily fluids. You know. Like Piers Morgan. But with 3 times the charisma, and 1/7 the arrogance, as he informs you of his attempt to become the champion of a certain event held at Redmane Castle. The first encounter with you is by his shouts for help, as he is stuck in a pothole atop a cliff, and he requires someone to strike him repeatedly from the rear with a blunt object, so as the force of the strikes will hopefully dislodge him from his circumstance. And as with any rather talkative, overly rotund, and barely upright Englishman, he very much politely inquires you, and very much unlike Piers Morgan, for help to extricate him from his circumstance. And once fully dislodged, Alexander infers upon you a token of appreciation, a consumable, and thanks you. Like I said, 3 times the charisma, 1/7 the arrogance. If you've managed to go through his prerequisite dialogue trees earlier, he will cross paths with you later on, before the start of the event he spoke so fondly of, at the place where this rather charismatic repository of organs will attempt to acquire fame as a great warrior. The commencement for the festival of Redmane Fortress, where the finest contestants from across the lands between struggle against a champion from the War of the Shattering, General Radahn, a demigod descended from the deity of Elden Ring, Marika. Eaten from the inside by Melania's scarlet rot. His wits long gone during the battle confronting the now witless red-haired son of Marika. Alexander played a considerably vital role, though after the confrontation, he doesn't seem to think his presence in the field amounted to much. Telling the player, I, on the other hand, am nothing but a crock. One hit was all it took to crack me, and for my insides to come spilling out. After that, I hid like a coward, and as such, I can hardly stand to face one such as you. Personally, I thought the affable container of entrails fought quite valiantly. I think one very big reason why many new players may struggle with getting into the flow of gameplay in Souls games is the lack of context in how the game should be approached. Speaking simply, knowing how to maneuver your avatar and utilize its movement set is of far greater importance than that of utilizing your attacks, and to a far greater degree compared to most other titles, such as the Devil May Cry or God of War franchises. The way the controls work, if you're not familiar, is similar to that of a mech simulator. Now, that might sound like a large stretch, but bear with me. In a mech simulator, say, the MechWarrior series or even from Software's very own Armored Core franchise, you lock onto a target, and you maneuver around that locked-on target by strafing, by moving towards or away from it, by dodging, or by propulsion, all the while managing the toll these maneuvers have on your mech's generator core. The combat. In a mech simulator, you fire off a shot of the laser. It creates heat, which needs to be dissipated via heat sinks, or drains your energy reserves, which needs a moment or two to be replenished via your generator core. If you fire missiles, it consumes ammunition. Likewise in Elden Ring, every swing of the sword, every parry, every dodge roll, every jump, every attack blocked, consumes a portion the green stamina bar. That stamina bar acts very much like an indicator bar for the mech's generator core in a mech simulator. And that stamina bar, as with every other aspect of your avatar, can be increased via point distribution through leveling up, as can your character's life meter, and mana indicator, or focus points as it is known in Elden Ring. And speaking of that mana bar, it essentially acts as an ammunition reserve for spells, incantations, and unique armament skills. Every spell or incantation cast requires varying degrees of reduction from your mana meter, ranging from a sliver for a simple glintstone bolt from your wizard's staff, to a third, or even half of your mana reserves, were you to cast the scorching breath of flames, bellowing from the jaws of a disembodied head of a dragon. Certain areas can be reached by way of multiple methods. As an example, the game gives the player a few pathways to enter Elden Ring's midpoint. The path most adventurers would likely use for access to the highlands of the Altus Plateau is through the ruin-strewn precipice. But the reason for that is because, although the most apparent route to the Altus Plateau is through a large medieval sandstone elevator, the Dectus lift, the game gives you no information as to where the key item necessary to operate the lift is located. As far as I could tell, none of the NPCs I came across gave any clues or tips on where to find the Dectus lift key. The item for operating this medieval elevator, as it happens, is split in two, with each half located in two separate fortresses on two adjacent continents. Elden Ring sort of assumes, as you explore about, you may inevitably run across the two halves of the Dectus medallion, the item necessary to access the lift. But thinking back on the method of acquiring the second half of the medal, this is quite unlikely. The probability of the coincidental areas the player has to happen upon to be able to access the fortress where the second half of the Dectus lift key is just that, coincidental, and the probability you'll happen to stumble across the fortress where the medal resides is also equally coincidental. The likelihood of you not triggering the necessary events for access to this place far outweighs the chances you will. This video essay has been pretty negative, but that's only because I've zoomed in on certain features and functions that could have been more thoroughly implemented, those which paled compared to the rest of the game's polish. But even these flaws do not deter the quality of the overall experience. I didn't want to talk about if aspects of the title, like if the catacombs, caves, and tunnels, and other commonly mentioned side content, feel copy-pasted, and to what subjective degree. I'm sure you've heard much judgment on those already, in other reviews, or video essays. Elden Ring is more than the sum of its parts. In totality, the world of the lands between is a wonderfully realized piece of storytelling. The sights, unforgettable. The music, surging when appropriate, unobtrusive when ambient. The enemies, challenging. The bosses, unforgiving. But if there is a word to describe Elden Ring, it would be touchstone. It stands in a rarefied echelon of titles. A class which includes such luminaries as Metal Gear Solid, Metroid, Warcraft, StarCraft, Gran Turismo, Street Fighter, The Legend of Zelda, Deus Ex, Resident Evil, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, Tomb Raider, Final Fantasy, System Shock, Elder Scrolls, The Witcher and of course Dark Souls. Games that not only defined their genre but were generation-defining games which continues to inspire generations since. If you've kept with me this far, thank you. This was a long game and it provided a lot to contemplate. I hoped it was worth your time, and yeah, if you liked this video essay, make sure to subscribe and comment down below. And if you didn't like something I talked about, or didn't like this video essay, also let me know by commenting below. See you around.